Hey there, Friendo here with a response to Aposticism on the subject of addiction. Personally, I don't have a lot at stake on the issue of addiction because I have never been an addict. And believe me, I've tried. Caffeine, alcohol, pot, women. I have failed to become addicted to all of these things. But I do have a very good friend, one of my best friends since college, who is an alcoholic. So, in that sense, it's pretty close to me. And a lot of my opinions on addiction come from talking to him. So the question here is, where do you cross the line? What is the line? And I mean that's not really the right geometry. Now my friend, he described being an addict as circling the drain, trying to see how far down you can go, how low you can go before you hit the bottom. And of course he said that you can't. As long as you're still alive, you can degrade yourself further. So in that sense, addiction as a self-defeating process is self-defeating itself, because you can always do worse. What's interesting, though, is the concept of circling the drain, because I think the geometry here is a lot more useful. But I would put it in the opposite direction. So if we think of addiction as a spiral, you spiral out from a point. That point is normality, just wherever you are in your life. You start spiraling out away from there. And what this means is that when you start traveling in a spiral, it takes very little effort, very little energy to get to exterior concentric rings until you start getting farther out. And this is the addiction process. It becomes harder and harder to trace your way back through the concentric rings of the spiral once you have devoted your energy into tracing it out far enough. And this is the life of an addict. But wherever you are in your addiction, it's easier to just keep going than it is to turn around and travel back. And this is why to stop being an addict, you have to transverse all of those lines and just go back to the beginning. You have to go back to that line. You have to get off the spiral altogether. Now, relating this to my friend, he was a drinking buddy of mine, and I mean, we were in college, we were in a fraternity together, we were drinking quite a lot. And that made me implicit in his alcoholism. Like most addicts, he did not realize he was an addict until far into the process. And that is kind of part of being an addict. In order for what you're doing to be an addiction, in order for it to hit all of the important points in a classification, it has to have been going on for some time. It has to be affecting your life. But while he was along that process, he would stop and he would ask me for support. Well, you don't think I'm an alcoholic, do you? And I would say no, even though I kind of suspected that he was. But he was drinking and I was drinking, and how could I say he was an alcoholic and not say that I was an alcoholic? So he apologized to me for it later, because that was really not fair. It was more or less duplicitous on his part, and that is part of the pain. That is part of the process of addiction. That you become deceitful, you become dishonest to yourself, and you get your friends and family to participate in that dishonesty, which is really where interventions come into play, when the people around you stop buying into the duplicity and show you what you are really acting like. Unfortunately, I wasn't a part of that process with my friend. He ended up going to the ER, having his stomach pumped, and nearly dying. So, honesty is important. The thing with addiction is that it's kind of an easy way to cop out from your problems. On the one hand, an addict can neglect all of the other problems in their life because the addiction itself becomes such a huge issue. On the other hand, someone who doesn't have an addiction can claim to have an addiction and get a kind of Munchausen sympathy out of it. And in neither case is that really accurate. Being an addict does not excuse you from stupid, antisocial, and anti-personal behavior. At the same time, claiming to be an addict, claiming to have an addiction, doesn't free you from the rest of the problems that you find in your life. What's important is to always be honest with yourself about who you are, what you are doing, and why. That's the advice that I give, that I think anyone can translate into anything that's happening in their lives. So, those are my thoughts on the issue. I'm Friendo. I'll talk to you later.